Hi, welcome to Sabbath School Daily, where we have been studying from this lesson right here, God's Mission, My Mission. This week we're studying from lesson number 2, which has the title, God's Mission to Us, Part 2, and today is Thursday's lesson, which has the title, The World, the Arena of Mission. Friends, we live in a world that is so broken, that is so fragmented, where people hate each other for so many different reasons. I mean, just this week, we're reeling with the news of another war in the Middle East. We see people that hate each other, that want to destroy each other, that will not stop until they destroy each other completely. It's been like that for generations, and unfortunately, we're seeing one more leg of this battle. Now, friends, that's not new to planet Earth. We have lived in a world ravaged by sin, and sin means war. We see war on so many fronts. War on political fronts, war on economical fronts, war on emotional and sociological fronts, and perhaps most of all, war on the spiritual front. Warfare is all around us. Have you ever heard that phrase that goes out of sight, out of mind? Yeah, well, that's the reality of millions of people that just turn their eyes away from the truth, the reality of the world around us, and they numb themselves with entertainment, with pleasure, with their work, with their job, with so many different things. Humans are extraordinary at coming up with false paradises. But when we allow the scales of lies and of deception, the scales that the enemy puts up to delude us, when we allow those to fall down from our eyes, we see the world around us and we truly understand why Jesus Christ proclaimed to be the light of the world. You see, you can only see truth through Jesus Christ. To everyone else, to everywhere else that doesn't have the catalyst of sight, the catalyst of light, then they just walk around in the dark. And unfortunately, friends, that's what we see all around us. Human beings, men, women, youth, and children, fumbling and bumbling around in the dark without Jesus. And that's where we come in as missionaries. That's where God comes in as the great missionary. And that's where we understand that the world is our true arena. It's out of the comfort zone. We're going to talk about that in next week's lesson, leaving the comfort zone. But today's lesson, it contrasts two verses that we've been studying this week. The first comes from Matthew chapter 28, verse 19, that says, "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations." The second comes from Revelation chapter 14, verse 6, that says, "Those who dwell on the earth, to every nation, tribe, tongue, and people." But as I've already mentioned in previous days this week, you could add other verses throughout the Bible that echo this same message. For example, Matthew chapter 24, verse 14, that says, "And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come." You see, it will be preached to all the world, to all the nations, and then the end will come. You could also add, for example, Revelation chapter 10, verse 11, that says this. Revelation 10, verse 11, that says, "And he said to me, you must prophesy again about many peoples, nations, tongues, and kings." Do you see that this is a message that echoes through and through throughout the Bible? That this gospel is for everyone, everywhere. The fact that Jesus Christ is coming back, that he forgives sins, that he changes lives, and that he wants to rescue and save us from the bondage of sin and bring us back home to where we should be, to where we were intended to be. Do you see that that is for everyone? And that there is no place in Scripture, in the gospel, in the good news, there is no place for any kind of prejudice, racism, or exclusion. The only people that are excluded from this are those who by their own free will decide to exclude themselves. And friends, this is something that we need to understand. We must understand. You have to understand that this isn't just for you or for your family. It's not just for your church or for your country. It's not just for your state. It's not just for your continent. It's not just for people that you get along with. This is for everyone. After all, in the most famous verse in the Bible, or one of the most famous verses of the Bible, John 3:16, we find that message expressed clearly. For God so loved what? And who? The world. That he gave his only begotten son. That who? Whomsoever. This is all inclusive. Whoever believes, anyone that believes, this is an all-inclusive message. So before we go out proclaiming this message, we have to understand and internalize that it is for everyone. It's a global message. And this is why I appreciate the Seventh-day Adventist Church so much, because it is the Christian church that has to the greatest extent internalized and applied this reality. I'm not saying that it's a perfect church. I'm not saying that we get everything right, but the fact that this message of the gospel is intended for the entire world is something that burns bright in the hearts of Seventh-day Adventists. When we hear that there are 3 angelic messages to be proclaimed to the world, that's why we go out. That's why we send missionaries. That's why where there are people, you will find Seventh-day Adventists reaching out to them. Not with a message of forgetting who they were, not with a message of forgetting their heritage, but with a message that there is a better heritage. Not an American heritage, not a North American heritage, not a South American, Eastern, whatever. This is the heritage of heaven that we have to understand, that we're being called back to. That's why, friends, look, I am not really a culturally affiliated person. I am not a politically driven person. I honestly have a very hard time, and this is something personal to me. I'm not saying that everyone has to be like this. I have a very hard time even identifying where my heritage lies. I mean, I was born in the United States. I grew up in Brazil. I've lived in Germany. I lived for a little bit in Austria. I lived in Canada. I think that by default, because of the way that I grew up, I have a hard time identifying myself with any land, with any nation, with any heritage or any people. Not that I don't like identifying aspects of my life to these places that I've lived and to these people that I've grown so fond and that I love. However, I do understand that my land is not here. That these divisions, that these borders, that these countries and states and counties and cities that I have lived in and that I live in right now, this is not my final destination. This is not my final home. We get so caught up, friends, in these aspects of life, in finding pride in the place that you were born, as though you could choose where you were born, as though you could choose the family to which you were born, as though you could choose the language that you learned as a child, as though you could choose anything of that nature. You can't choose the color of your skin. You can't choose the color of your eyes. You can't choose the color of your hair. There is nothing in this that we can choose. And I truly don't understand why it's difficult for me to actually rationalize and process how we find pride in these things when these are not things that we could choose one way or the other. And so I truly believe that once we set aside the things that we bring up, that we try to use as justifications for us to see ourselves as fragmented, as different from each other in the sense of worthiness, in the sense of superiority or inferiority, we need to cast these things aside because, my friend, Jesus is coming back. And this reality right here, it will dissolve. Once we understand that, once we live that, once we breathe that as citizens, not of this country, this continent, this race, this people, but as citizens of the kingdom of God, citizens of the kingdom of heaven, and we unite under the banner of the cross, that's when we truly will be the church that goes out. The lesson, it emphasizes 3 aspects of Jesus's mandate to go out, his commission to go out. Because as he says here in Acts chapter 1, verse 8, that you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem. Well, you have to understand, first of all, he's saying that we will be his witnesses. I need you to understand that. What does it mean to be a witness? So many people believe that they are called to be lawyers or attorneys of God, defenders of God. They burn with zeal when God is profaned or God is blasphemed. And look, I'm not saying that I don't feel offended when I hear people saying horrible things about my faith, my God. But at the same time, don't you think that God is strong enough to defend himself? That he is capable enough to defend who he is? The Bible tells us that God will not be mocked. And so why do I need to rise up? Why do I need to stand up as an attorney, a defender of God? God doesn't need that. He calls me to be his witness, nothing else, his witness. You have 2 different kinds of witnesses. You have a true witness and you have a false witness. Now, the false witness is that one that speaks of something that he did not witness, that he did not see, that is outside of his scope of experience. And we have many that are false witnesses. People who don't know Jesus Christ, people who have not encountered him yet and yet pretend to and speak as though they did. Now, I understand that in the Christian life, there are ups and downs and, we go through motions of life. And so my first encouragement to you here is get to know Jesus Christ personally, on a personal level. Spend time with the book that he gave us that describes who he is. Spend time in prayer. Spend time speaking about him, contemplating the realities that he has revealed to us. And I'm sure that that will help you be a more effective and a better witness. On a second level here, we see that he tells them to go to 3 different areas, 3 different scopes of witnessing. The first one here is Jerusalem. And I really like what the author did because, of course, was Jesus being literal to the disciples here? Of course he was. He was telling them to go to Jerusalem, then they should go to Samaria, and then they should go to the ends of the earth. But we can also understand this as it applies to us because we're not in Jerusalem. We're not in Samaria. How do we understand this to us? Well, first of all, go to Jerusalem. Be my witnesses in Jerusalem. As the lesson describes it, it says, you will be my witnesses. At that time, his disciples were very close to Jerusalem. So Jesus was basically saying, begin to share your experience with God with people who are close to you. Mission begins at home, with family, with neighbors, with friends. This is the initial place of mission. This is something that we have to understand because I've known so many people that dream of going to far off lands to be missionaries in remote places and different and unique cultures. However, they're not missionaries at home. Do you really think that you're going to be an effective missionary overseas in a place that you don't know, in a language that you don't speak, in a culture that isn't natural to you? Do you really think that you'll be an effective missionary there if you're not an effective missionary at home, with your family, in your own culture, in your own land, with your neighbors, with the people that go to school with you, with your friends? It's going to be very difficult for you if that's your dream. So the first thing that Jesus is saying is learn how to be a missionary close to home, to what you know. Secondly, is the order to go to Samaria, right? That's what we find here in the next portion, the next paragraph, where he continues, in all Judea and Samaria. Our mission also involves those who are in some ways close, but at the same time distant from us. In this group are people who may speak the same language that we speak, people who have a similar culture, but do not live or share the same reality that we do. This is our further place of mission. What this is saying is that there are people and there are realities of life around us, even close to us, that are very alien to us. So people that we do meet at school or at work or on the street, that they don't believe in the same thing that we do, that don't live the same life that we live, that don't even speak the same way that we speak, that have completely different priorities, completely different ways of seeing life and different perspectives of existence. So that means that while these people, they are close, they're different, extremely different in these senses, in this context. Well, how do you reach someone that doesn't believe the same thing that you do? How would you as a Christian relate to a Buddhist or a Hindu or someone that is Muslim? How would you relate to that? Or to someone that is Jewish? So you see what I'm saying? We need to learn how to find common points of interest. We need to learn how to speak to them. And not only speak, we need to learn how to listen. That's a very big part of this. I have known so many Christians, so many Seventh-day Adventists, that when they meet people that don't believe in what they believe, that don't speak the same way that they speak, that don't see the world as they see it, they want to kind of shove their own knowledge, shove their own worldview down people's throats, and yet they don't stop to listen to what these other people have to say. Look, listening to what someone has to say doesn't mean that you agree with them. It doesn't mean that you then believe what they're saying. It doesn't mean that you're validating what they're saying, but at least you're respectful enough to have a dialogue, not a monologue. You will never win anyone over with just a monologue of what you believe in. Jesus didn't do that. People came and talked to him, spoke to him. Look at his encounters in the Bible. Did he only speak or did he listen to them? Did he have a real conversation with them? Look at John chapter 3 and 4. Jesus speaking to Nicodemus. Jesus speaking then to the woman at the well, the Samaritan woman at the well. Two completely contrasting people, absolutely different. And yet he speaks to them. He listens to them. He has a dialogue. Finally, we have the third area here. Beyond this, Christ says, and to the end of the earth. God's mission calls us to reach individuals from all places, nations, people groups, languages, and ethnicities. This is our ultimate place of mission. So this is where we see the far-reaching aspect and the far-reaching scope of mission. Now, there are many ways to do this. In our world today, you don't have to literally go or physically go to a far-off place to be able to do mission to a far-off place. For example, I know for a fact that here with my little channel, with my little Sabbath School Daily, I'm reaching people that are in Africa. I have people in Asia that write to me. I have people that have written from Australia. There are so many ways that you could do worldwide mission, different from what I'm doing, different from a missionary that actually goes to a place, does. There are many ways. So pray to the Lord that he might show you how you can do that in your own special way. Don't forget that today is Thursday, and what that means is that we have our challenge and our challenge up. Please remember to study your lesson, look up the Bible verses, fill out the questions, think about what you're reading, what you're studying. God will give you even more. Also, comment down below with any questions, with any comments. I'd love to interact with you. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to our videos. We release one every day, and I hope to see you again here tomorrow for another Sabbath School Daily.